The XT3, when used right, turns into an amazing cinematic camera. And so part of the reason why I kind of recorded these clips is to kind of test out the extent of the camera's capabilities. Now here, it's a rainy day. We got just basically a good, bright, solid, bright, you know, I guess background with the rain, kind of reflecting off all the light from the actual, diffusing all the light, but making it just basically a white blanket of light. And I wanted to test out the low light capabilities or the shadows, the capability of the shadows that are being recorded on the two boys there. These are my kids. So my two kids, I'm trying to see how far the range of the dynamic range can go, and it handled it pretty well. Right now I'm re-recording it at 4K. We have it on a DJI Ronin SC and 16 millimeter, albeit it's a bit wide transfer. It transfers to a 24 millimeter 24 millimeter lens if you're shooting at 35 millimeter full frame. So roughly 24 millimeter. It's a little bit too wide, but for for home shots, mostly lifestyle shots, it's a very, very nice lens to use. Now here you can actually see again the shadows versus the highlights, and the dynamic range of this camera is excellent, especially when you use the included log profiles. Here the rain of course cleared up. Still trying to check out that dynamic range. It's a much brighter day now that the overcast has cleared a bit more. Right here, actually, my gimbal got a little bit stuck. I was holding it wrong, so that was a user error as opposed to the machine error. And again, we're trying to test out that dynamic range to see how the camera handles with the bright sun trying to peek through the clouds, trying to see if we can pick up, if you look closely, that it's still raining. We can pick up all those details with that 4K setting. And again, the dynamic range, you could still see, if you're viewing it on a good enough screen, you can still see the details of those shadows, which I think is ultimately really important in any camera. So that's one of the capabilities that the XT3 has had. Here we're trying out a little bit more of a dolly kind of effect with the actual Ronin. And it pretty much handles it good, especially if you have an extension rod on the Ronin itself, so you can get those better low angles. Again, I'm trying to also test out the autofocus features, which is something I'm really, again, impressed about the XT3. That's one of the reasons why I moved from the actual GH5 to the XT3, is how quick the autofocus is able to adjust to your scenario. I use this camera for wedding events, so a lot of the times having that manual focus isn't the best, isn't always convenient to the situation. And if you think about it, if you had the perfect autofocus motor and system where you never have to worry about focusing on what you're trying to kind of catch, it's 100 times better than trying to have half of your mind on the manual focus. So that's one of the biggest features I think it's important, is how accurate, how stable the focus is, how easy it is to switch focus. Now again, here, this is once already the day has kind of cleared up. The post, I guess the post clouds, looks so beautiful. It was one of those dreamy days after the actual rain kind of stopped. And again, we're trying to pick up that. It's a little bit easier at this time of day, don't get me wrong, to get a nice even shot. But that dynamic range within the shadows itself of my son there, you could kind of see when you trying to still make sure you get some details of the subject, which in this case is the boy, my son, versus the background cloud and sky that we still want, of course, to be able to be seen in the shot itself. So again, one of the awesome features with the XT3 is that dynamic range when you're using that log, and especially when you learn how to perfect your color grading skills, which I still have a lot to do to work on, but that dynamic range, that sharpness, the ability to autofocus when there's a darker subject compared to a lighter, bright lit area. It's an important detail of the XT3, which is why it's always going to be one of the best cameras that I've used in my entire career. Yeah, just we're trying to see here the again, just different movements with the Ronin, how it's able to handle, how it's able to keep that focused on that background, on that subject, which is the tree line. Picking up those two rainbows, nice. All that color gradient is kind of well seen. Right here, we're actually also using a filter, an ND filter, so that we can maintain that 180-degree rule as far as our shutter speed goes. So we're shooting at 24 frames per second. So we're having to keep that shutter speed at 1/48th of a second. So as to make sure we remain with that motion blur.